Today's video is going to be about Lime Crime in the color Powder. And I already opened it, so you can see some of it. So my swatches are labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. I'll be doing comparisons and close-ups and stuff, so the numbers are just to help us keep track of each swatch throughout the video. Number 1 is a gray, 2 is a pink, 3 is a natural red, 4 is black, and then from 4 up to 11, we have a range that goes to platinum blonde. And then number 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So I'll be taking the dye directly from the container, and I'll be putting it at the top of each swatch. And some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I'll be putting the diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. I do quickly just want to say that everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take dye differently. Please note that most of my swatches are not virgin hair. The only one that is the number 4 black swatch. So please just use my video as a reference as to what it could turn out like on your hair, but it's not guaranteed. It's always best to do as much research as possible when dyeing your hair. For the diluted section, we're going to be doing equal parts. So we'll just say a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part dye to 1 part diluter. If you are curious, I do always just use a plain white conditioner when I'm diluting. If you don't know what diluter is, it's basically what it sounds like. There's a variety of reasons why people will do it, but generally it just kind of lightens the color of the dye. And for like a dye that we're doing today, colors like very pastel light blues can sometimes help tone orangey colors out of the hair. Okay, so I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours. I will rinse the dye out, and then when they're dry, I will meet you back here. So obviously, this being a pastel color, I would say past number 8, it doesn't really do anything on the darker swatches. And even though it did dye number 8, 9, and 10, number 11 and 12 definitely look the best and most intentional, in my opinion. Between 11 and 12, it really just matters on the undertone you'd like for your hair. If you have very platinum blonde hair, like number 11, the dye kind of looks like a sky blue. And then with number 12, with the hair being toned, the blue loses a lot of the warmth and it's a lot more like a cool tone blue. The toned blonde swatch and the gray swatch beforehand were not the same, but I feel like the result is similar. It looks like the gray is even more cool toned. So with the comparison here, it kind of looks like this is warm, this is medium, and this is cool in terms of undertone. Number 2 was the only other swatch that dyed, but I still think it was just a hair too dark for the dye to really take. At the bottom, it looks like a lavender-ish color, but then at the top, it kind of muddies out a lot. So I would say it's better if your hair is even lighter pink than this one, and you want to use powder. There's somebody with like a machine outside. I don't know what they're doing, but if you can hear it, I'm sorry. So I have 3 comparisons I wanted to do today. Let's start with Arctic Fox, and we'll start with Periwinkle. For Arctic Fox, Periwinkle is their like pastel blue dye. So this is comparable to number 12. This is comparable to number 11. And this is comparable to number 10. So Periwinkle on its own is definitely a lot more cool tone than the powder, but similarly to powder, it to me at least looks the best on number 8 and 9. When I did Periwinkle, I was diluting 2 separate parts on the strand, so it fades out kind of here, and that's because I did a diluted part right there. I feel like on the Platinum Blonde Periwinkle, the diluted Periwinkle kind of toned the blonde a little bit, especially on the very diluted part. And I'm assuming it's because of those cool tones in the Periwinkle, whereas the powder still looks relatively blue, it's just a lot lighter. To me, it kind of looks like powder. I'm assuming because of the warm tones in the dye, it is a little bit stronger in dyeing, because you can see like number 10 and 7, even though like they're both not meant to dye that color hair, you can still see some dye on the number 7 swatch. But to me, in comparison, the powder looks a little bit more intentional. And I've heard of some people's hair just straight up not taking Periwinkle. I've noticed just generally that warmer tone dyes tend to do a better job at sticking to the hair than cooler tone dyes. So it really just depends on your hair and how well it takes pastel dyes especially. So I did want to stay within the Arctic Fox family for our next comparison, and that's going to be in the color Poseidon. So Poseidon is not a pastel dye, but I'm thinking the undertones might be similar. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, number 9, and number 8. So I was mostly wondering if the diluted Poseidon would look like the powder when it's not diluted. So I went ahead and flipped some of these swatches around. I honestly feel like the only one that is kind of similar is the number 12. But it seems to me when Poseidon is diluted, it holds a lot of green tone in it. And even on the toned swatch, you can see just a hair of green. But I do like the mid-tone for number 12. While it's not exactly the same, I feel like it could be a good alternative if you like powder but you wanted it a little bit darker. But either way, I would say Poseidon is a little bit more green in undertone. So the last comparison I wanted to do was Lunar Tides in the color Moonstone. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. I almost feel like powder is a mix between this Moonstone and Periwinkle from Arctic Fox. I mean, it's not like a perfect mix, I'm sure, but in comparison now, powder looks a lot more cool tone than the Moonstone. And Moonstone is a pastel dye as well. So I feel like this is just kind of adding to my theory where I think if a dye is a little bit more green or like warm toned, it sticks to the hair better. I already said that, but seeing how well that this Moonstone dyed like 9 and 10 as well, even on the diluted sections, I'm learning that it must be easier to make more pigmented dyes with certain kinds of colors, like blue-greens especially. I always think, especially with Lime Crime, they have those little packets. That's what I use. And it could be a good idea to buy one of those and just do like a strand test really quick, because I've noticed that pastel dyes are kind of iffy. Alright, so we are done with the comparisons. I'd like to now get into some close-ups. And I do just want to say, close-ups, as well as anything afterwards, will be filmed in natural lighting, including any of the pictures you see at the end of this video. So this is me popping in after editing. So unfortunately, because I use natural lighting, sometimes the weather and the time of day can have a big effect on how things look. I'm not really sure what the weather was like on the day that I filmed the before shots, but I'm assuming it was kind of cloudy because I refilmed the after shots 2 times and they're still appearing much lighter on camera, and I think it's because it has been extremely sunny the last few days. I tried to edit them to look more correct, and obviously I can't refilm the before shots, so I just wanted to apologize for that really quick. Luckily, the 2 swatches that matter the most, number 11 and 12, the Platinum Blonde and the toned swatch, they filmed pretty similarly, so I didn't have to do much editing for that, so those are pretty accurate. It's just the darker blonde, some of the darker swatches even, just they should look the same before and after, but they don't. And I think it's because it's so incredibly sunny. I hope this video helped. If you have any requests, just remember I only do dyes that are not tested on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.